Hello, and welcome to the homestead. So, we're inside today because it's really cold and snowy and nasty outside, and I don't have heat in the workshop yet, but I did write that down on the to do list and make that a higher priority. And I'm going to be doing a video on my to do list system and how all that works here soon. Hopefully, I'll get to it this evening or tomorrow. Get to the first part of that. You might hear the kids in the background. Uh, but anyway, I was so busy getting the camera ready, I forgot to get my notes off the table. Hold on. All right. That didn't take too long. Anyway, we've been talking about uh, the people from the Bible and the stories from the Bible, trying to get from David, or trying to talk about David and his mighty men. So I backed all the way up to Abraham. We've been going through, and last week we finally got to David, and now we're going to talk about probably the most famous story of David, and that's David and Goliath. All right. I know most people are pretty familiar with the story, but not everybody. So we're going to start by doing a quick rundown of the story, uh, and then we're going to get into the details of it. And we're going to go through the story 3 different times, real short each time, to discuss some lessons to pull out of that after we go through the summary. All right, so let's start out with the summary. So David, he arrives at the battlefield with food for his brother. He's too young to be considered part of the army. I've heard all kinds of conjectures of he was 12, he was 13, he was 15. I have no idea how old he was. He was less than 20 because he wasn't part of the army. If he would have been 20, he would have been part of the army. That's the law in Israel, especially since he was Saul's armor bearer and he was training with Saul in the military. He was training with Saul, other soldiers, as one of Saul's armor bearers. So he would have been there as part of the army. So I don't know. He was less than 20. He was pretty mature for his age. We're going to see that here in a little bit. So Goliath comes out and he's a Philistine giant, comes out and he challenges the armies of Israel and mocks God. And he does this for 40 days. 40 days comes up a lot in the Bible. It's usually some sort of like number of completion. And I think that's what they're getting here is Goliath came for the number of days he was supposed to come according to God's will before David showed up. Usually the Bible doesn't mention details that aren't important, especially the older stories. They have the least amount of unimportant details in them. So what Goliath's doing is he's challenging the army. He's saying that if I beat your champion, we'll consider it that I have the whole army has won the battle. We will conquer your lands and take you as our slaves. And if your champion wins, we'll be your slaves, and you have won the battle. The idea here is instead of having lots of people on both sides die, you only have one person die. And this is really common in ancient warfare. You'll see it a lot in other ancient texts. It's all over the Iliad. They do it repeatedly in the Iliad. I don't understand what the point of doing it more than once is, but that's what they do. But anyway, the idea is that whichever champion wins, that doesn't necessarily mean that army's stronger just because they have a stronger champion. It means their god is stronger and their god won the battle. That's why Goliath is mocking God. Israel's army is terrified. None of them will step up to meet Goliath's challenge, which isn't very good for Saul because Saul was hired. They wanted a king to be a military commander and go out before them like the other armies had after they rejected following God, so God would do it for them. So the commander of the armies of Israel would go before them. So this isn't looking good for Saul. Uh, David's surprised that they're standing around. Nobody's doing anything about this. Nobody's defending the honor of the Israel. Nobody's defending the honor of God. So David volunteers to fight. Saul reluctantly agrees. David goes out. Says, I'm going to win because God's going to help me win. He runs towards Goliath, takes him down with the sling, takes Goliath's sword, chops his head off. David wins the battle. David lifts up Goliath's head. The armies. David then chases after starts running towards the army of the Philistines. The Israelite army follows him. They end up winning the battle. It's a complete rout. The Philistine army retreats. They get a lot of plunder from the battle. The Israelites do. David carries the head around, Goliath's head around, showing it as a trophy and impressing people with it. That's the kind of thing that would normally impress me, but I mean, if you got a giant's head, I guess that's pretty impressive. It's just something we don't do in modern times. It's one of the things that understanding the culture of the Bible, what I really like about both the Lord of Spirits and the Whole Counsel of God podcast. They try to explain the culture around what's going on as well. All right, that's the basics of the story, and the classic thing that people talk about when they talk about the David and Goliath story is don't be afraid. We should go conquer the giants in our lives. We should take on and we should honor God. And here, let me clean the camera off a little bit. There we go. That's better. And all that's true, but there's a lot more other things deeper in the story. You got to remember the Bible is written for us, not about us. So the story from David doesn't necessarily mean we're supposed to be like David and go hunting giants. And we're not supposed to turn this story purely into an allegory and ignore or say that anything bad in our life is like a giant and we have to be like Goliath. Well, it's true. We need to rely on God, and we're going to see that here in a second. That's grossly oversimplifying the story to make it easier for people to digest. And we're supposed to be, Paul says we're supposed to be trying to develop and grow as Christians. And instead of nursing on milk, we're supposed to be after the meat of the story. All right. So the next lesson I want to focus in on is David being too young to fight. We know he's under 20. He's not considered warrior age, even though he's been training with the military. He's not allowed to fight. But God still uses him anyway, even though he doesn't fit the expected role of even anybody in the military, let alone a champion for the entire military. Goliath even mocks him about that, like, you're coming at me with sticks? You don't even have a sword or a spear or anything. Like, Goliath's covered in armor. He's got spears and swords and shields and all that bronze armor that he's covered in. And you gotta remember, this is the late Bronze Age. So his bronze sword, his bronze spear tip, his bronze armor, that's all. The late Bronze Age was an economic collapse worldwide, worse than the Great Depression ever thought about being. And bronze had become very rare and hard to acquire by the late Bronze Age, early Iron Age. And Goliath is covered in bronze. The only way he would have gotten that bronze is by killing other uh, other soldiers and taking their weapons. And I misspoke earlier. His spear tip was iron because it's beginning of the Iron Age. He has the most high tech, cutting edge weapon, literally cutting edge in this case. And when the armies of Israelites were Israel was first put together, they only had enough bronze to have two swords, and nobody has spears. They're fighting with pointy sticks, clubs, and farming equipment. So that's how rare bronze is. That the king of Israel could only get his sword for him and his son. And Goliath is covered in this stuff because all the people he's killed, so they could melt down their bronze sword into just armor for him. But David, even though he doesn't fit the role of a soldier, he doesn't look like a champion, he doesn't look like a soldier at all, God still uses him. So we have to make sure that we don't look at our children and other young people. As fathers, we don't want to look at our children and be like, oh, they're too young for God to use them. They're too young to be useful. No, we need to help train them and help them find what God wants for them. And I don't know how to do that very well. I got a 20-year-old and a 14-year-old, but I've only been a father for 4 years. I'm still learning. If you got any idea, if you want help and discuss this, we have a Telegram group. I'm trying to grow the communication and grow that group so we can talk and discuss and help each other be better people and be better fathers and husbands, fathers, and servant leaders, and help with homesteading and help with prepping questions. So if you I'm not perfect. I need help learning how to raise kids too. Also, as servant leaders, like I'm a scout leader, I talk to the teenagers and younger kids at church. We got to do the same thing for them as much as we possibly can too, and help them define what God wants for them, and help them to be good, godly people as they grow older. All right. So the next lesson, so the whole time David's talking to all the people, he's talking, why are we letting this Philistine challenge the army of God? Why are we letting this Philistine insult God? He goes to Saul, why is this Philistine allowed to talk about God that way and challenge the armies of Israel? He sees it as a spiritual battle, not purely a physical battle. And we're surrounded. Paul, again, we're going to bring in Paul. Paul says that we are surrounded by a battle, that we fight not against flesh and blood, though, but against principalities and rulers. So we fight these evil spirits that are all over the world and all over our culture. Jesus said that when a demon's kicked out of a man, and that man doesn't bring God into his life, that eventually that demon comes back with 7 more demons more evil than he is to re-inhabit the man. And unfortunately, in the West, we, so in the West, we removed all the pagan gods and became a Christian culture. And now our culture has kicked God out of our culture. And unfortunately, those demons are coming back into our culture, those false gods. And I'm working on an essay. So I read Jonathan, or John, I can't remember the name of the author. I'm trying to remember to add it to the comments. But called Return of the Gods. And it's a pretty good book. But he does a good job of identifying the problems with culture and how they're related to ancient false gods, but he doesn't do any good with solutions. So I've been working on an essay, and I need to get off my butt and finish it. I'm going to make that a priority tomorrow. Is finish the last couple paragraphs so I can start getting the editing and getting the final touches done, and hopefully get that done by the end of this year. But working on an essay that will help us um, understand the practical things we can do every day in order to fight evil. And basically, it boils down to we don't fight people. People are the battlefield. We fight the evil spirits by bringing more people to God. And unfortunately, a lot of Christians go after the people that are doing the wicked things and target them and make drive them away from God instead of bringing them towards God. What they say may be right, but it's not a good. They're not using a good, solid tactic to bring these people towards God. All right. So David, he doesn't have faith in God the way most modern people say they have faith in God. A lot of atheists are like, well, Christianity is just based on faith, it's not based on evidence. Well, I have faith in my wife, Sarah. And when I say I have faith in my wife, Sarah, that doesn't mean I think Sarah is real. That'd be ridiculous to say. What it means when somebody says they have faith in their wife, that means, or faith in their husband, it means I believe that my spouse is going, based on their past actions, is going to be acting like my spouse in the future. They're going to be, they're not, they're going to have the same basic habits. I mean, people improve and get better, or should improve and get better over time. But I have faith in her. I don't have to worry about when I'm out of the house or doing something, or she's out of the house doing or anything. We don't have to worry about the other person being unfaithful. And we even use the word unfaithful to describe that. And so David's faith in God is not that God exists. Even the demons believe God exists. They know God exists. What David's faith is, and our faith should be, is that we've seen the way God behaves. We understand the way God behaves. So that way we can trust that God will fulfill his promises that he's made. David has seen God or heard the stories and knows people who've seen it firsthand, God fighting for Israel. Uh, God has helped David kill lions and bears to protect sheep. David has heard the stories of the Exodus, of Jericho, of Gideon and Simeon, and all the other stories. He's heard them his whole life. He knows, based on what God has done for him and his people in the past, that God will fulfill his promises and continue to do those things because God has always fulfilled his promises. And we have even more stories than David had. Also, we have other evidence. Um, we have the entire field of study called apologetics. I really like inspiring philosophy and stand to reason. Those are great places to start learning apologetics and having more and having like scientific and logical and other arguments outside of the Bible to prove God, but also having the historical evidence to prove to understand that the Bible's truthful. So that way we can trust the stories in the Bible. So that way we have faith that God will fulfill His promises. And His promise is that if we follow Him to the absolute best of our ability, if we repent of our sins and do everything we can to give up our life to live the life that He wants for us, that He will allow us to continue to do that after we die and join Him in heaven. And we need to pass those stories and those understandings onto our children. So right now we've been doing putting together an Advent puzzle as a family and going through an Advent uh, Bible study. And if you want to join me on that Advent Bible study, there's a link pinned to the top of my Telegram channel, and there's a link to the Telegram channel in the description. It's Prepare to Prosper, and it's in the YouVersion Bible app, and it's put together by Through the Word. I've listened to their and read their Bible study stuff before. It's just pretty good, so that's what we're going with. Maybe by next year I'll have one put together. I don't know. Anyway, so we need to make sure we pass those stories and those understandings and the logic and reasoning to have faith in God to our children and those around us. All right, so it says in the story that David went and picked up 5 stones from the river. That doesn't mean he thinks he might miss. He has complete faith in God. What it means is that, and we'll see later, that the Philistines have more than one giant. It's mentioned in this story, and it's mentioned in other preceding stories that we're going to get into. But they may have been Goliath's brothers. A lot of people think they were Goliath's brothers. I'm pretty sure they were. There's some conjecture there, so I'm not going to say it 100%, but I'm pretty sure they were Goliath's brothers. So David grabbed 5 stones because he was planning on killing Goliath and his 4 brothers, that he was going to keep doing what God wanted them to do and cleanse the land of the giants. And might do a whole live stream or Bible study session on the giants someday. We'll see. But yeah, David was just preparing to take on all the giants, and we're going to see later as we get into more of the battles and more of David's mighty men. We're going to see that David's mighty men kill more giants, and they work on cleansing the land of these giants. And remember, we're modeling ourselves and modeling the YouTube channel as aspiring mighty men. We're not there yet, but we're working on being the kind of people that will do the kind of feats these mighty men did, and not necessarily slaying hundreds of people in battle, but going and fulfilling our mission from God, doing the best we can, being physically able to do what we need to do, being spiritually able to do what we need to do, and taking care of those around us. And we need to remember to look at things in the big picture, not just the immediate thing that's right in front of us that's causing us issues. We got to look at the whole thing. That's why I'm putting together this to-do list system. It's a way that I've been using, and I'm formalizing it for busy homesteaders to be able to take all the things that need to be done and boil it down to individual things you can do every day towards getting that life you want and having that perfect homestead and that kind of stuff. And I remember what I was going to say. What I thought of when I was mentioning that. So it's going to be It's based a lot on this Jack Spirko, the Survival Podcast, but mostly on Nicole Sauce and a series she did a while ago on vision statements and her My Three Things method. I'm borrowing heavily on those guys when I prepare to do that video. All right, so next thing we see in the story is David rejecting Saul's armor. Now, Saul tries to give David his armor, and David's like, this armor doesn't fit me. It's not right. And he says, I don't. Some translations, it just it doesn't fit, and other. But he uses a word similar to testing. Like, David's never tested it. And this isn't like a pass-fail test. It's more like how you test to see if it's like gold is real, 24 karat gold or 2 karat gold. That kind of testing. David's never tried it. He doesn't understand it. He doesn't know if the armor will actually protect him. But what he has relied on is God. And he's relied on God in the little things in his life and big things in his life. So he knows that God will protect him now. He also knows that God has promised that he'll be king, and he's not king yet. And he knows that God will fulfill his promises. So David knows that he can't die. That doesn't mean David's being reckless here. It means he's relying fully on God. And we need to start relying on God in the small things and the medium things and praying more, like if driving in the snow. Before we get in the car to drive to snow, say a little prayer. Ask God for help. Ask God for help on this thing and that thing. And constantly be asking God for help. Now, that doesn't mean just asking God for help, too. We need to praise God as well. But I'm just saying we need to rely on God in situations where smaller situations and get used to relying on God. So when big things come, we don't panic and we don't try to fix it ourselves. Now, when Jesus talks to the rich young ruler, and the rich young ruler is like, "Hey, I haven't broken any of the commandments. What do I have to do to go to heaven?" Jesus tells him to sell everything, give it to the poor, and then he can get into heaven. And then the guy goes away sad. And Jesus says it's harder for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to go to heaven. That doesn't mean that rich people are inherently bad. It means that rich people rely on their wealth to get them through situations. And people who are completely destitute, people that don't know where their next meal's coming from, people who have dirt floors and stuff like that, that them shacks made out of scrap wood that they found laying around, those people, they rely on God for their next meal. They rely on God for everything. So it's easy for them to rely on God and easy for them to build a relationship. But rich people, it's hard for them to build a relationship with God. And as Americans, we're rich. In the grand scheme of things, throughout the world, we're rich. Throughout history, we're unbelievably wealthy. So Louis the 16th, I think it was, he's known as the most decadent king in world history. He'd have like 6 meals planned for him every day. Well, right down the street from me, I can stop at McDonald's. They got more than 6 meals. I can go to Wendy's next door to that. Burger King's next door to that. Taco Bell's next door to that. And there's a Dunkin' Donuts across the street from them. And that's all within less than a mile from my house. And that doesn't include the grocery stores that are filled to the brim with food. I mean, you can even see behind me in the pantry here, we got food. I don't have, and that means because I have this food, I have to be more careful to rely on God. And I have to learn to rely on God more. And we all have easy access to food. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't store food. That's important because we can be a blessing to ourselves and blessings to other people when like the snowstorm that we had the other day. If neighbors needed, if it was bad enough that we couldn't get to the grocery store, the neighbors needed to go to the grocery store, or if somebody needs help, or we're financially behind. Like the one time me and Sarah didn't have a lot of money because of work situations at the time, and we needed new tires on the car. Well, we just didn't buy food for a month, and then we had enough money to put tires on the car. But we got to be careful that we're relying on God and we're not relying on our own strength and our own abilities or the strength and abilities of others. So that's David not relying on the armor. He relied on God instead. So this is the part that I learned recently, and it's pretty cool. So I've always wondered, and I hope if you haven't learned anything yet, that you learned something in this section. So I always wondered why, over and over again, Saul keeps asking people, whose kid is this? When Saul knew David. David plays music for him. David trains with him. David's one of his armor bearers. He knows David really well. Why does he keep saying, whose kid is this? Whose son is this? Well, it has to do with the fact that they're in a honor society. So what happened is, again, I've mentioned past streams, Saul became king because they wanted a king that was like the nations around them, that would be a military champion for them and go out and fight battles for them. Well, David shows up and Saul's in the back, hiding. So he's already, that's not what he's there for, supposed to be doing. And he's scared of the other champion. That doesn't look very good in an honor culture when your job is to be the champion and you're scared of their champion. And so David goes around, he's asking all these questions, and people are telling him that, oh, this is what's going on, and if anybody kills them, the king has promised all this stuff if you go kill the Philistine, if you go kill Goliath. And David keeps asking people over and over again, hey, if I go kill him, what do I get? Hey, if I go kill it. So he's spreading rumors around the camp and challenging Saul and being like, hey, everybody's scared of this guy. I'm not scared. I just want to know what the deal is before I go fight. What am I getting out of this? And then David goes and kills Goliath. He is the champion of Israel. And Saul looks at his assistant Abner, and he's like, hey, whose kid is this? And Abner's like, I don't got a clue. Don't ask me. What's going on there is Saul wants Abner to say, he's your son. That way, Saul will get the honor of raising David and training David to the point where he could kill Goliath. And then a couple other times, Saul brings David in front of other people while he's holding Goliath's severed head. And he asks David, whose son are you? And every time, David says, I am the son of your servant Jesse. David is not letting Saul have any of the credit here. And that's because David knows that Saul shouldn't be the legitimate king anymore, that he should be. So he's challenging, even at his young age, Saul's honor and trying to elevate him and get himself into a position where he can become king one day. And David's been hanging out in the palace a lot. He's probably talking to people. God's been using this as an opportunity to train David on how politics works. And we see here that David's actually starting to use the politics and understand the politics. Now we'll see later on in the story that when David's downfalls is he doesn't do what he's supposed to do all the time. He doesn't do all the stuff a king's supposed to do. And that causes him to sin. But right now, so he's not being complacent. And we need to raise our children in a way that their actions bring honor to our family. And I had something recently happen in my extended family that doesn't bring honor to our family. And it's not something I feel comfortable sharing right now. But I'm this person is intentionally not following God and bringing shame upon our family. So the other people involved with it, I'm putting ahead of him, even though he's a blood relative. And I may feel more comfortable talking about this in the future. I may not. Depends on how the victims involved want, how much they would feel comfortable with me sharing. And this is fresh, it's brand new, so I'm not going to air their dirty laundry. But I'm going to use it as an example and show my kids what's going on, talk to them about it, so they know this kind of behavior is unacceptable and that it would bring shame upon them and shame upon the whole family if they would do something like this. Oh, hold on. I already did that section. All right. So now that David's won and the Israelites have finally had a good, solid victory against the Philistines, they haven't driven the Philistines out yet, but they've had a good victory against the Philistines. And if you don't know, the Philistines are most likely Greek Sea people. They're from the island of Crete, I believe. And because the Bronze Age collapse is happening, people moving around in different areas, there's lots of um, stories of these Greek sea peoples moving around and trying, basically being like Vikings. What we think of as Vikings. They do raiding parties, they capture, they use war as part of their economic engine, and also they take land and settle it and harass their neighbors after they do it. And the Philistines are those kind of people. And so David has the first great victory against the Philistines. And David's got more victories against the Philistines. They won't completely drive them out. That story's way too complicated to get into on a live stream, and I don't know the whole story of the Philistines and Hanukkah and the Romans and all that stuff and Alexander the Great. It's all wrapped into it. I don't know the whole story. I'm still learning that. But what I do know is that after David's big victory, the people are recognizing him as their military champion, not Saul. The women are, maybe it's the whole people, but they're shouting, Saul has killed his thousands, but David is tens of thousands. Those aren't supposed to be literal numbers. It's just showing that David is 10 times a better military leader and champion Saul is. And we saw earlier that Saul was worried about Saul's biggest thing that drove him to sin earlier in his story is worrying about the people rejecting him. And now the people are rejecting him from David. And we're going to see in the next section Saul versus David. And that's going to be our next live stream, I'd rather. And how the people rejecting Saul is driving him to commit even more and even greater sins. And as leaders of our households, we need to, and as servant leaders and we need to be bringing that kind of glory to the people around us, and we don't want them to sing of our glory, but we need to help instill pride in them, and not pride, worldly pride, but pride in good accomplishments, pride in good grades, pride in getting your first paycheck, pride in starting your own business, pride in reading the Bible for the first time, pride in hitting physical fitness milestones, stuff like that. And I need to do a better job as I put together my preparedness group of giving praise to the members of the group as they reach certain prepping milestones. All right. So I hope you learned something from this. I hope you got something out of it. There's some stuff that I need to work on that I've mentioned throughout this, and so you can join me, leave a comment, and we can discuss this. There's also, like I mentioned earlier, a link to the Telegram group. If you don't know, Telegram is just a discussion group. It's an app that's a discussion group. It's t.me/prepare to prosper. Or you can go to Telegram, search prepare to prosper. And none of us can do life by ourselves. We need others around us. We need whatever you want to call them, foxhole brothers, 3 a.m. friends. I heard one guy compare it. You have the kind of friends that would carry a map for you, like the guy that carried the friends that carried the map for the paraplegic that ripped the roof off of a building to get their paraplegic friend closer to Jesus. Do you have friends like that? Do I have friends like that? And the Telegram group is a place where we can discuss homesteading and preparedness and living out our mission and helping each other reach our goals, become the kind of people God wants us to be. And I'm not like some guru. I don't know everything. I'm just learning like you guys are, and I'll share what I know. You share what you know. We'll share each other's wisdoms. We'll learn from each other, and we'll all grow better together. So that's all I have for today. Remember, we prepare today so we can prosper tomorrow. I'll end this live stream now so the kids can go back to doing what the kids were doing and making a little bit of noise. And we got work. I got work to do outside. I gotta go down dig out the crawl space so I can get the Christmas tree stuff out so we can decorate for Christmas. But anyway, remember, we prepare today, prosper tomorrow.